period where I am saying that we are going live on everything. I'm going to remove Twitter. Save changes. Okay, it looks like we're live on most channels. Let me just make sure that we hit that extra button that Instagram wants. All right, my friend Kristen, we are live.
Cool.
So I hear a little bit of an echo. Are you noticing that?
No, I'm not hearing an echo.
Okay, I hear an echo with my voice coming back in. So just let me know if it gets bad. But all right, well, so we'll say hi to everyone. We already have a couple of people in, and I'm just going to do my little housekeeping spiel about the live stream, which is just that before I introduce our lovely guest here. That most of your outlets that you're all watching on, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, potentially YouTube, but definitely Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, I've seen you can definitely send us comments, and I will be moderating the comments. And so if you have any questions for dear Christian here, or me, I will be monitoring the comments as they get typed in. And I'll try to ask Christian those as our conversation flows. And if not, I'll just make sure that we get to it at the end. Or maybe I'll just, throw a wrench in the plan and just interrupt him and ask one of your questions. Oh, we have Drenda here saying good morning to you both. We have a Bill Eisler. I don't know if I say that right, if it's Eisler or Eisler. But hello from Carmel, Indiana. I can't wait for, they're coming next year. How exciting. I wonder what boat they're going to be on. I wonder if they're going to be on your boat, Christian.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Bill, tell us if you're Liseron or Miss Cove. If you're Liseron, you're with Christian. All right, so everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second live stream. We're starting to do this on our off season when our boats are not cruising, and we just want to have this opportunity to stay in touch with you and continue to have a relationship with you all, and just enjoy each other's conversation and presence with those of you who have been on our boats or those of you who are about to be on our boats or considering it. And even just anybody interested in Alaska in general, Southeast Alaska in general, in the Tongass National Forest, which is why we have our friend here. I have to make sure I'm doing this in the opposite direction of what I'm used to. But Christian Desrochers is a naturalist on the Liseron. We have two boats that we cruise from Southeast Alaska. We have the Mist Cove and the Liseron, and Christian is the naturalist on the Liseron. And we do have a naturalist on the Mist Cove as well. Christian, do we have, is it one naturalist per boat?
Yeah, so it's one naturalist per boat. I actually worked my first 2 seasons with TBC on the Mist Cove, and then I switched over to Liseron last year. So Charlie is the Mist Cove naturalist. But yeah, basically there's just one of us per boat.
Cool. Oh, and it looks like we got our answer from Mr. Bill. He's going to be on the Mist Cove. So he's going to be with Charlie?
Yep.
All right. Bill, you're going to be with Charlie. I can't promise he's as fun as Christian. I don't know. I haven't been on with either of them, so I don't know. I don't know who's fun, but we're going to test Christian out today. Anyways, we have our lovely Drenda with us. Thank you, Drenda. You're the best. Drenda is part of the TBC family. She keeps all of our accounts in order. Very important human in our lives. And then we have Gamblin' and Ramblin' tuning in from YouTube. All right. And that looks like that's our boat. Who's Gambling and Rambling?
Yeah, that's the Mist Cove. You can tell because the kayaks are behind the chimney stack.
Who are you, Gambling and Rambling? State your name. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. You can stay private. Anyways, so Christian, we want to talk a little bit about. I'm going to be the one that asks the questions, the dumb questions. That this is like my job. I love it. What is a naturalist, and what do they do on the boat? And I just want to pepper in my own little experience because I actually got to be on a boat company boat a few years ago.
Mhm.
I was out there doing all the photography for us. And unfortunately, but fortunately, my one time to sneak away and take like a lot of landscape shots and like behind the scenes shots was during a lot of the naturalists lessons and presentations. So that was
Yeah.
like one time everybody was like glued to your lessons or to the naturalist at the time's lessons. And so that was my one time to sneak away with my camera and kind of get the other parts. So I didn't really get to experience them, except for, of course, the awesome naturalist, lessons that we would have while we're like cruising out on the skiffs and stuff. But
Yeah.
ones that are actually on the boat, I kind of miss some of those. So you got to tell me, what is a naturalist and what are you doing on the boat?
Yeah, so a naturalist is basically just the person on the boat who has studied or has hopefully a decent bit of information regarding various subjects relating to Southeast Alaska, and specifically, obviously, to the nature out there. Um, we usually say like a naturalist slash guide because we're also the ones who lead all the hiking and kayaking. So we have deckhands who have licenses. They're the ones that take people fishing. But if you're going kayaking and hiking, the likelihood is that you're going to be with me or with Charlie on the other boat. So yeah, we give presentations on board, as you mentioned, on various subjects: bears, whales, glaciers. I do one that's like just sort of on the Tongass itself. Yeah, and basically we try to be out on the deck whenever possible. If we see whales, if there's something interesting, whenever people have questions, it's usually like, oh, that's a great question for Natty. And so people point you in our direction. Um, Aside from that, the thing about working on a boat is you do a little bit of everything. So I'm also helping the deckhands with dropping skiffs and operating the cranes. I'm on the night watch, the anchor watch. I wash lots of dishes. I run some food with the stews. Like whatever you can do, you try to do.
Aw.
So, but the main goal is basically you're there to tell people about bears and trees and fun things like that.
Oh, yes. And if anyone looked at our social media this morning, you'll see a video post of Christian we put up there today of you talking about some trees on a hike, which was cool. And I get all of these great photos sent to me after every single trip, as I do the social media for the company. And I get to see lots of fun photos of Christian. And if you even look further back, you'll see you guys should all, now that you've seen his face now here on this live stream, if you scroll through our Instagram or back, it's probably easiest on Instagram to scroll through the wall kind of further back in time. You'll see some fun photos of Christian in various settings. I know there's one time where you're like helping a big skiff get tied down on top of the boat or something.
Oh yeah.
I think those are gratitude post to the crew for the season was actually a photo of you. um, but yeah, so there's lots of fun things that it seems like you are able to teach people, and the bears and the whales and the trees that you're talking about, the coolest part about them is they're there and you actually are showing them while it's happening. Right.
Yeah.
So you're taking them into the forest and you're explaining. So people that's the thing I love about the boat company so much is like almost every day it's like feet on the ground in a lap in the Tongass if you want it to be. Or it could be in the water of the Tongass, fly fishing if you want it to be, or it could be kayaks in the water. But I just love that you can put your feet on the ground so often on our trip. And I know a lot of other experiences don't offer that opportunity to actually like get off the boat, especially in the private way that we do. I remember on my trip, I was shell shocked when I got back to Juneau because I hadn't seen other signs of life for like 7 days, aside from those on our boat, except for like one little float plane that came in to an area we were hiking, and like 2 people came out of the float plane, and like that was it for the whole 7 days. So, but again, yeah, so that's really cool. So when you're telling people about these flora and fauna, if you will, if that's proper terminology, you probably can correct me on that. But when you're telling people about like the nature, the landscape, and the wildlife there, it's actually happening most of the time. Like you're saying it when we're seeing whales, you can kind of talk to their behavior, right? And same with the bears and
Yeah, I mean, so when I was working beforehand in Ketchikan, I used to tell our guides like talk about what's in front of you. You know, don't talk about this because you know about it, but it's not something that they can see. So we're pretty lucky to get to see a lot of cool stuff. And you know, if people ask a question about something, I'll try to answer it. But in general, it's really cool to be able to just like, okay, we'll talk about whales when we see one. We'll talk about bears when we see one, and you know, when we're out on hikes, it's always like, what is there in front of us to talk about?
yeah. And I'm not gonna say it yet, but I am gonna pepper in a little sneak, or what should I say, spoiler alert. Christian mentioned the word Ketchikan. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's an interesting location you talked about, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that in a little bit. We have some really special news to share with you all, and it has to do with Ketchikan. But hang tight. I have some more questions for Christian. So, Christian, I wanted to ask you, why is it so important that you're on the boats and doing it? Why is it important, do you think, that you're on the boats, and why do you think it's important? Why do you think TBC, or we call it TBC, but why do you think the boat company wants you there? And just one more thing, sorry for everybody. Christian mentioned the word natty. Just so you know, natty means, that's what we call our naturalists. We call them natties. Just in case you thought we were talking about like somebody named Natty. No, we're talking about a natty naturalist. So
Yeah.
it's the nickname for Christian. So Christian, yeah, can you speak to that a little bit? Why do you think it's important for you to be there in the Tongass, and why do you think the boat company feels it's important for you to be there?
Yeah, so I think in general with the naturalist position, the idea is that um, we're representing a little bit of the company's goal to educate about conservation, about the place. So, the whole purpose of the boats being out there is to show people Alaska and to give them an opportunity to realize what an incredible place it is, how amazing it is to be in like a true wilderness, to see all the cool stuff that we get to see. And um, one of the things that separates us from other companies as well is our commitment to preserving and conserving the lands out there, working against, logging and old growth forests, working against trawling, things like that. So, as the naturalists, we're sort of the ones that do the most talking about that sort of stuff. Whether it's through our presentations or just talking to people or being asked questions, like we're sort of the educational arm of the boat, so to speak. So that's why they want naturalists. I think why TBC wants me personally there is, well, Hunter likes the fact that I know all the good mushrooms to pick, and I can also find the Macintosh tree, which is the tree where his father's ashes are spread. So I think I'm one of the few within the company that still knows that. So.
Oh, wow. That's so funny you said this about the mushrooms, because I've always seen pictures of the mushrooms coming in for the last few years from the trips. But this is the first year, and maybe I just had overlooked them in the past years, but this is the first year where I saw someone getting close in a picture to the mushrooms. And then they were like these orange mushrooms. And then a couple pictures later, the mushrooms were like on the chef's table, and the chef was preparing them. And I was like, oh my gosh, they picked mushrooms and they're going to cook them.
Yeah. No, I mean, this year, that must have been off Miss Cove. This year was not the best year for mushrooms. It was a little dry out. But yeah, normally, chicken in the woods, golden chanterelles, there's lots of yummy mushrooms to find out there. So it's always fun. I like doing a lot of foraging. So, between that and picking bull kelp for pickles, or teaching people about beach asparagus and feeding them that on the shores. yeah, it's just always cool to get out there, find some food, and let people, get a little taste of the Tongass.
Wait, you just said finding asparagus?
Yeah, beach asparagus. It's a intertidal plant. It's a really nice, salty, crunchy snack that I love showing people. Not that our chefs don't feed people enough, but it's always good to have a snack on a hike.
No kidding. I didn't know this was part of the hikes. You get snacks straight from the hike
Yeah.
in the moment. And so you can eat them right, well, at least we'll just talk. I'm just for the beach asparagus. You can just eat it.
Yeah. Depending, it's all dependent upon the season, but for a good part of the season, beach asparagus is available. And then as the season progresses, we've got berries and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
always like to, the more senses you can engage, the more people will remember and experience. So, if you can sit there and let people listen, if you can let people touch stuff, taste stuff, smell things, it's going to be that much more of a remembered experience, and that much more of an experience that they, will take back with them. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
No, absolutely. I'll never forget my first time picking a berry in Alaska. And it was just like such a marvel, to just pick a berry and to eat it.
Yeah.
And then by the time I was had a couple days under my belt, not of picking berries, but of seeing them, and I stopped because I didn't want to pick them anymore. So I was like, well, other animals, they don't get to go back to a boat or to a hotel and get to eat whatever they want. Like I'm big animal lover, so I'm like, I bet a bear would really like that berry. So
Yeah.
do it for him.
Well, and I always try to make an emphasis on, every opportunity is a good opportunity for teaching. So whenever we're harvesting, I always try to emphasize to people the importance of responsible harvesting. You take a little bit that you need, you leave some for other people, for other animals, and then you leave some just to do its thing, so it keeps coming back. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that was part of what was so, like, I think me being able to eat probably one or two was what made it so special. And maybe if I didn't get to eat it, it wouldn't have felt that way. But for me to pick it from nature and to actually eat it in the wild, I think that's what made me appreciate preserving it more and not coming back for more, or taking more, just because it was such a special experience. And you really get the whole, like, there's this kind of larger picture of the cycle of nature when you do that. So it was
Absolutely.
definitely, yeah. Um, well, so do you have another question I wanted to ask you is, do you have a personal reason for doing what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, there's no place I'd rather be in the summer than Southeast Alaska. Like, I die in the heat. And so, honestly, I call Southeast Alaska an addiction. It's like once you sort of get a taste for it, it's very difficult to not want to be back. So this last year was my 8th season out there. It is just such a remarkable and special place. As far as working on the boat, it's like it's just so cool. It keeps me busy because there's always something to do. There's always more dishes. Uh, but also it challenges me. There's always so much to learning to be done. And just in the 3 years I've worked for the boat company, like my understanding of that area and my knowledge has just like expanded massively. We have such great books on board, and people ask so many really great questions, which gives me a reason to look up the answers when we find ourselves with self-service, which thankfully we don't have often. That's another reason why I like it, is the ability to disconnect, be out in the wilderness. But Southeast Alaska is just a whole bunch of islands and waterways, and it's amazing how much more you see being out on a boat. Like, I worked all those years in Ketchikan, and it was really cool. I got to know that area pretty well, but I've seen so much more, just being out on the boat. And yeah, it's just
Cruising through the areas.
yeah. There's just no place I'd rather be. I've considered working in other parts of Alaska, but Tongass is a really special place. I like the rain. I like the clouds. So I'm Yeah, it's just difficult not to want to come back.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I'm aching to come back. Looks like we say more dishes and more studying, which I've personally seen Christian doing. That's from Brenda. And then we had another comment specifically for you. Hey Bear, such an amazing experience to be in the woods or on the
Nice,
water.
Stephanie.
Oh, that's cool. So you keep some relationships. That's lovely. And then we have our lovely John King with us today. Oh, he's tuning in from YouTube. Hi, John King. We love you. John's also part of our team. I don't even know what he is. He's everything. He is like the right hand man to Hunter. Yeah, I guess is what I would say. He's definitely in operations. So he's director of I think corporate compliance and just he just does everything though. I love John. We are so lucky to have him, and he actually has a question for you, Christian.
Mm.
We talk a little bit about what changes you've seen since your first trip to South.
Yeah. I mean, my first time out in Southeast Alaska was in 2013. And I was working in Juneau. So in Juneau, now there's a fancy cocktail bar and a kombucha store. So Juneau's growing up a little bit, I guess you
Yes.
could say. Environmentally or nature-wise, I mean, obviously, like the Mendenhall Glacier out there has receded quite a bit. I don't know. It's interesting because there's an overall pattern that seems to be warmer summers, drier summers, which makes a lot of our guests happy, but makes me a little sad. But things bounce back and forth. So, we had very dry summers in 2018 and 2019, but 2017, and I wasn't there for 2020, but from what I hear, 2020 dumped buckets. So, there's a little variation. There's always a little coming back and forth, but overall, it seems to be, warmer temperatures, not necessarily less rainfall or precipitation overall, but less of it's coming down as snow in this fall and spring. So we're getting more rain, which has a whole bunch of impacts on the salmon life cycle and their ability to reproduce. So that's something. And then I think just there's a lot more people out there like even just in the few years that I was working in Catch Camp from 2017, 2018, 2019, it was like okay, it was busy, and then it was like, wow, it's really busy. And 2020 happened. Obviously, everything kind of shut down, but then it sort of came back almost immediately in the same degree. And I mean, it's built and built. So in 2022, 2023, there's been more and more people coming in on the big cruise ships. And I'm always trying to recruit whenever we have younger guests on board. I'm always trying to recruit future guides and people to work in Southeast Alaska. The truth is, a lot of people left the seasonal lifestyle in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID and all that. So that moment of instability prompted a lot of people to go back to school or get different types of jobs. So even though tourism has really ramped back up to what it was before and even more, there's lots of open positions for work. So there is tons of work in Southeast Alaska.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
great
exactly.
for for people looking for jobs, and gosh, it's a beautiful place to be.
Exactly. So I'm always trying to get people to come out to Southeast Alaska. It's a real special place. But yeah, there's definitely been some changes over time.
So some of those changes, just diving into them a little bit, you mentioned, I feel like I have to pry because if I don't get this from you, I'm never gonna know. But so since I have you, I'm just gonna selfishly pry. So how has it been affecting the salmon life cycle, for example?
Well, so like specifically in that issue I mentioned where you have more rainfall and less snowfall, snow acts as like a slow release mechanism of cool waters. And so when you're getting rainfall and not snowfall, you're going to see changes in hydrologic pressure. So basically just how much water is in the stream, but then also changes in temperature of the stream. And salmon really want cold water. It's very important for them, especially our salmon in Southeast Alaska. They're used to a certain temperature of the water. So the times that this happens and where it's most important is in fall and spring. And in the fall, that's when salmon are running upstream to go reproduce, to lay their eggs, to sperm cast, do all that stuff. So if you have higher hydrologic flows at that time, it can become more difficult for salmon to run up the stream. So there's a little bit of a balance. You want to have water flowing because if there's not enough water in the streams, it's difficult for the salmon. But if you have too much water in the streams, then it's also more of a challenge for the salmon. In the springtime, that is when the eggs are hatching, and so you're starting to get your little leave-in, and then your little baby salmon out in the salmon fry out in the waters. And so if you have too heavy of a stream flow at that time, so if you're getting lots of rain and not so much snow, you're gonna push those fry out into the ocean before they're ready. Most salmon fry, aside from pinks, spend time in the freshwater ecosystems before going out to the ocean. So
Wow.
that's one example. I mean, warming ocean temperatures result in less food, and so yeah, there's lots of changes out there. There's salmon getting smaller and smaller. So to mention Catch Can again, 2017 was the last year they did a king salmon derby. Now they do a silver salmon derby because just they realized the kings were getting smaller and smaller, wanted to minimize impact on that population. But that was one that I saw directly, having been there for a few years, right at the tail end of that.
Sure. Okay, well, you mentioned Ketchikan like 5 times.
Yeah, we could talk about Catch Can.
Let's do it because we're like 30 minutes in. This is probably going to be maybe 45 to an hour. Why don't we just do it right now? What do you say?
Yeah, why not?
Should we tell him?
Sure.
Do you want to tell him?
Yeah, so there's a very exciting idea being kicked around, and actually I think it's pretty permanent now.
It's done. It's official.
So the first trip of the season on the LIVESTREAM is going to be a 10-day trip from Sitka, Alaska, which is one of our normal destinations, down to Ketchikan, Alaska, which is not one of our normal destinations. And so, yeah, we'll be spending a few days in familiar territory and then spending about half the trip or more in not so familiar territory. We're going to see if we can see some new glaciers, see if we can get on land in some places, which is all dependent on Forest Service permits, but we're going to go explore some new areas. For me, it's kind of like going back home a little bit. So on Marissa earlier, I'm very attached to the Western Red Cedar, which was a very important tree species for the indigenous tribes out there, the Klinka and the Haida. That's what they made their canoes from, or that's what they continue to make their canoes from, totem poles, things like that, of which Ketchikan has the largest amount of totem poles anywhere. So if you've been on a trip with me, you may have heard me tell a story about the William Seward Shame Pole, which happens to be located in Saxman Totem Village in Ketchikan, Alaska. So it opens up some new opportunities, some new places to check out, and a new place for our guests to finish their trip in and explore a little bit.
Yeah, so to just let that sink in to everyone watching, we are offering an entirely new itinerary this year, upcoming 2025. It's the first trip of the season. We have one trip going. It's the first trip of the LIVESTREAM. So it's trip number 1. You'll see it on our website. Actually, I can let me throw up that. If you didn't know, that's where you would go. You can just go to theboatcompany.com I should change that to org. We like to say org, but theboatcompany.org or .com will take you to the same place. And then you can click on reserve or reservations, and you'll see all our new trip, which is trip 1 on the LIVESTREAM. As I said, it starts on May 10th. And it goes through to May 20th. So it's actually 11 days. So any of you who have been on our trips before, you know that first day is actually included in your price, a hotel stay. And then we pick you up the next morning and get you on the boat and we start cruising. So This trip is actually that 11th, first of 11 days is going to be your overnight in Sitka per usual. And then you have 10 full days of cruising. So it's 10 days on the boat, taking you all the way southbound from Sitka to Ketchikan. And it is on the Lisa Run, and Christian is on the Lisa Run, and Christian apparently has a lot of experience with Ketchikan. I've been behind the scenes with our lovely Paul Olson, who gets all of our permits and all of the things, and Christian, and as well as Captain Cliff. As they've been putting this itinerary together, they have spent so much time doing it. I have a printout that we've just gotten up on the site. It's multiple pages, obviously, because it's an 11-day trip. You've got to check out the itinerary. It's also on our itinerary page on our website. And we're really excited. It's going to be our first new offering in about 30 years. It's going to be our first time in Ketchikan in about 30 years. So the boat company has been around for 40. And we haven't been in the Ketchikan area in about 30. So, and we've never done this itinerary before. So it's going to be super exciting. And we'll see how, if we get enough people, maybe we'll try to squeeze in a second trip at the end of the season for you all. But that I probably shouldn't have said because that's what we don't know. But the Ketchikan trip is 100% a go. And we're so excited about it. So we'll be putting that out in an e-blast and announcing that to everybody soon. But anybody who's listening in, you all got a sneak peek. Spoiler alert. Anything else you want to add there, Christian?
No, it's should be pretty fun. If you're there with us, you'll probably get to hear me talk about the Seward Shane Pole and Western Red Cedars, which is always very cool. But no, mostly it's just a great chance to expand our zone a little bit and get into some new areas. And and basically from what I gather, we're doing that trip, then we're boogieing back up to Sitka so that we can resume our normal season, Sitka to Juneau, Juneau to Sitka, Sitka to Juneau, Juneau to Sitka.
Correct. Yeah.
It is a cool opportunity. I think it's a bit of an experiment, and I love being part of an experiment. So
yes.
we will see how it goes.
It's super fun because, our itineraries, anybody who's been on our boats probably multiple times knows, our itineraries are very dynamic. So while we have our spots that we typically go, just on our 7-day itinerary that we've had for years and years and years, that goes between Sitka and Juneau, we usually keep that about the same, but with weather and, just opportunities of what we're seeing, wildlife, things like that, we'll kind of there'll be slight little twists and tinkers to the itinerary. But, again, even just your day, you get to pick your day every day on our boats. You get to, the guest coordinator will come up to you and say, would you like to go fly fishing today? Or would you like to go, salt fishing? Or would you like to go, hiking, or would you like to go kayaking? So that's so dynamic, even just your individual experience, but then also what the boat does is dynamic. So this Ketchikan trip was very much, when I was putting the itinerary on the website today, I was seeing a lot of obviously the first few days of the trip are the same as our other trip, because we're coming from the Sitka area, which we're used to. But I saw a lot of kind of that same language of we're gonna check out this spot and see how that is, and then we might cruise this way, in this way. But definitely we will be starting in Sitka, ending in Ketchikan. And I was actually looking, Christian, and I looked on the map earlier, and that's quite a distance.
Yeah, no, it's quite the journey. I think it's 240 miles, something like that. That's if you're going a straight shot. So yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, I just want to emphasize that, as you were kind of pointing out, with our normal trips from Sitka to Juneau, from Juneau to Sitka, we do try to hit new spots and vary up the trip a lot. And one of the things, to kind of go back to an earlier question, one of the reasons why I love working on the boat is we get to do a lot of exploratory stuff. So like every season, you know, there's a few new places that we kind of pepper in where it's like, well, we've never been here before, we've never been on shore here, we've never kayaked here or something. And so
Yeah.
we go to these new places, we try them out, and you know, it's a lot of fun for me. Hopefully fun for our guests too. Um, it's I like to describe the trips that we offer as kind of being like when I was working in Ketchikan as a guide, these are the things I would do on my days off, like taking a kayak out, taking a skip out, popping on shore, you know, falling around like a little game trail wherever and just seeing what you find. And that is something that's really neat about what we offer. It is a very dynamic and ever changing trip. So we get tons of returners, which is cool. But one of the things we love doing is showing people who come back again and again new places.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've felt like is so special about certain, you know, just being in the travel industry is the ability to have an offering in an area that almost like a resident of that area would want to go and do, you know, and that's kind of what you were saying, you know, the kind of the way that it feels. That's so cool to hear you say, because I've been thinking that, but so cool to hear you say, because you actually didn't you live in Ketchikan too for a little while? You said.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of like with this. I was there for the summers, but I was there for about 3 seasons, 3.5 seasons. So I spent a good time out there, a good bit of time, and yeah, you know, it's like we had our normal places that we operated there because I was land based and dealing with people coming off the big cruise ships, and so when I had a day off, it was always like, ooh, now's the chance for me to explore, and you know, with the big company, it's like the things that we do typically are exactly what I would have been doing in those days off. So it is really cool. I love that aspect about it. It takes some getting used to. I think like a lot of the hikes that we offer are not quite what people assume is a hike. You know, we have a few that are maintained trails, but a lot of it is following game trails. You know, so following in the path of bears and deer.
That is so, so cool. I have another question that I saw come through for you. What are you most looking forward to seeing that you don't normally see? I think Drenda's probably talking about in
Yeah. So,
well, obviously his tree.
Yeah, the Western red cedar for sure. That's one thing that you know I earlier I said don't talk about things that you can't see. I talk about Western red cedars all the time, so it'll be nice to actually be able to see them and talk about them.
And then your totem pole, apparently, that you've talked about before.
Yeah, which I'm not sure I'll get to see, but I certainly hope the guests go check out the totems. It's a super cool thing, and I'll for sure be pushing that on people as we get near Ketchikan. I think it's cool that we're going to check out some potential new like glaciers. I think we're trying to see if we can see like the Bear de la Glacier. So that's going to be pretty neat and interesting. Being out by like the waters of the Stikine River could be pretty cool. And then I've been to the Misty Fjords before on a boat, but it's been a long time. It's been about 7 years, and by the time we're there, it'll be about 8 years. So getting out there will be really cool too.
Yeah, so Misty Fjords is like this national monument area.
Yeah.
When we were originally exchanging emails about it, when we were devising this itinerary, I was kind of just watching and reading all the emails, obviously not picking the itinerary myself. And I saw some of the older staff members, you know, who've been with us for a long time, who started. I'm talking about Kathy. Hi, Kathy, if you're listening, Kathy. She's who you talk to if you call in and make a reservation. But she started as, I think, would you say a stew? I don't know what, but on the boats. She started on the boats, and she's been with us for, I think, like 30, 40 years, something like that. Yeah. And but she had mentioned Misty Fjords, and I'm like, she's like, make sure you put in Misty Fjords. And I'm like, okay, like, sure. And I thought she just meant there will be Misty Fjords. But no, it's actually a national monument. And it looks beautiful. It's like a very beautiful, natural, preserved wilderness area. And we do have, if you go to our itinerary page of our website and click on our Ketchikan itinerary, you'll see, I think it's down towards the bottom because the Misty Fjords is at the end of the trip.
Yeah, you actually have to like pass by, you know, technically you go further south of Ketchikan to get to Misty Fjords. It's a cool place. I haven't been there since 2017, so that would be cool. But yeah, there's just a ton of stuff that we don't, you know, like I said, check out the new glaciers would be cool too.
Yes, you mentioned the glacier name. What was it?
I think if I remember from the itinerary, we're gonna see if we can see Baird, Baird, and LeConte, Laconte.
That's right.
So that's, you know, like I said, it's all experimental. It's in the early part of the season, so sometimes they can be pretty icebound. But yeah, it'll be cool to try it out and see what we see.
Yeah, and then I also saw Alaska Alexander Archipelago Islands. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the archipelago wolf, but I know that was a wolf that was, you know, considered up for protection at some point in the past.
Yeah, so we see, it is interesting because there's a big divide between where we typically operate and further south. So Frederick Sound is one of the bodies of water that we pass through, and it's sort of a unofficial divide between like our Brown Bear Islands, which is where we mostly operate with Admiralty and Baranof Island, and the islands further south, which don't have brown bears, they have black bears, but they also have the Alexander Archipelago wolf, and some of them have moose as well. So like QU Island we go to, we see wolf tracks pretty often when we go there. But as we go further south, we're going more and more into the various islands that have the Alexander Archipelago wolf. So maybe we'll get lucky with that as well.
Wow. Okay. And then just to clarify, you were saying potentially, and I know it's May, I know everything's about timing, and I know you can't say we'll definitely see certain kind of animals, but so in terms of wildlife, just being able to answer some questions, since we completely now started talking about this Ketchikan trip.
Yeah.
Do you expect to see, I know that that's kind of the beginning of whales coming out in the beginning of the trip, which is again in that Sitka area, right? But then like what else, like what are you hoping to see? I'll put it that way. Because we're not like committing that we can guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, that mid-May time is like, we are starting to see more and more whales get into the waters. We actually sort of make our journey northward from Oregon alongside the whales. So we see them up there. So we always hope that we can see humpbacks. We're always hoping to see, we don't see them as often, but we always hope to see orcas. And this puts us into some new land as well. So maybe areas where we might see them. Bears will be coming out of hibernation. We're always excited to see bears. Yeah, it's really gonna depend, but I always used to joke that you know, people always ask, because I have a fascination with trees and plants and lichens and mosses and stuff like that, and my little joke about it is like, I can't guarantee that we're gonna see any animals. And when I used to work in Ketchikan, it was like I knew that we weren't going to, because of the nature of the tours we were giving, but I can guarantee that we'll see trees and plants. And so as long as you know how to talk about those things, then you're okay. And if you see a bear, people are pretty excited. So, you know, if I'm lucky, I don't even have to say anything, you know, we'll just enjoy the bear. But yeah, it's pretty great.
Oh, it looks like Kathy got back to us. 35 years she's been with us. Started varnishing and painting the lease. Oh, and the lease, you know, well, obviously, 35 years ago, that's what we had in Tarpon Springs. First year, I was the assistant chef, and then Stu. And now she's the director of reservations. Very, very cool. So if you call to ask any questions, Kathy's probably going to be like overwhelmed by me saying this, but if you have any questions about this trip or any trip, call Kathy right now. She's in the office. They're on Pacific time, so they're open. And then it looks like we have a question from Bill about his July cruise. Can you kind of speak a little bit to, even though he's, well, Miss Cove, but it's still the same area you guys will be in on Louisiana?
Yeah, it sort of depends on what period of July. July is a funny month, but for sure by that point the humpbacks are like very much in their feeding grounds. They're out and about, splashing around, feeding. So humpbacks, we can't guarantee wildlife, but if we don't see a humpback whale, it's a pretty rare day. Or at least I should say a pretty rare week that we don't encounter at least one humpback whale.
In July.
In July, and honestly, pretty much in general. They're
Okay.
pretty consistent with us. Orcas they're like a wolf pack, so they're constantly in movement. There's a chance of seeing them, but they're less guaranteed. But there is always a chance of seeing them. So if your trip is in early July, I will say that during that time, it's kind of a funny period where the bears sort of go back up in elevation. So they're sort of done eating the spring plants that come out on the shoreline. So in the early part of the season, we see bears on the grassy shores and out in some of the floodplains because the young grasses and sedges and young plants are more easily digested for them. As those start to flower and as they start to grow, they become less easily digestible. And so the bears actually start following the retreating snow. I'm not sure why I'm pointing, but I speak with my hands.
Yeah.
So they start following the retreating
I'm seeing
snow
the top of the
up
mountain.
And so we still see some bears on the shore, but we start seeing less and less. Oh, sweet. So towards the end of July, by that point, the salmon are starting to run, which is always really exciting. And tomorrow, next year is an odd year, so it is a heavy pink run. So the pink salmon run on odd years heavier than on the even years. So once the salmon start running up the streams, then our bears come back down. So there is a few weeks in the middle of the season where seeing bears isn't quite as common, but once the salmon start running, we start seeing them more in the streams and stuff like that. So hopefully that. For sure, eagles. I mean, eagles are super common out there. Maybe we'll get a chance to see some sick black-tailed deer and things of that nature. But it is, a pretty cool period of time. The mountains should hopefully still have some snow up on them, which always makes it really beautiful. When you go out to the glacier, you should see lots of seals out in the ice, which is cool. And also, the Arctic tern is still in Southeast Alaska at that time. And the Arctic tern we see at the glaciers, they make the largest migration of any creature on the planet. They go all the way from Tierra del Fuego in Antarctica in the southern hemisphere, all the way up to Southeast Alaska and further north. So they're pretty cool. Lots of different types of birds. July is a good time for that. We still have hummingbirds and stuff. I know on the LIVESTREAM we keep a hummingbird feeder out so that we get the chance to see our little rufous hummingbirds.
Oh, that's so cool. And could you I know that I feel like theirs is, you're saying Wales is kind of consistent throughout the season. Can you just give us an overall with the bears from beginning to end of season of kind of like how you feel? I know we were talking about there for a minute, but.
Yeah, no worries. So basically with bears, the kind of average year in life is they're coming out of hibernation towards the end of April, start of May. And they hibernate at high elevation because they want the snowpack to provide insulation. But once they come out of hibernation, they move down to the shorelines for the most part. Basically, they want to be in an area where they can start finding food. And at this point, they're pretty much vegetarian. If they come across a dead carcass or something, they'll be happy to eat it. But they're eating lots of grass, lots of sedge. Lots of young plants. And so those things are going to be found down on the shoreline at the lowest elevation from, outside of the tree line, basically. They want areas that are without snow that are growing most rapidly. And that'll last for a couple months. We see them a lot on the shorelines, grassy shores, things like that. When we go into bays that have like a river system coming out, then we see them out in those floodplains. Then towards the end of June and the start of July, we still do see some in certain places, but uh, they tend to start making their way, like I said, up in elevation. They're following that snow as it retreats, because as the snow retreats, young plants are growing. And bears have very sensitive stomachs, not quite as sensitive as ours, but they're not able to digest forage that's very difficult to consume. So they start heading up the mountains. But then when the salmon come in and the berries start coming in towards mid late July, well, then the bears start coming back down. So it's from our perspective, it's like we see them on these grassy shores and out in the floodplains, and then we start seeing them a little bit less, and then we start seeing them at river mouths as the salmon start running. And by the time we leave, they're still feeding in the rivers, and then they start making their way back up to hibernate again. So, yeah, it's a pretty interesting cycle. But so hopefully, Bill, you have some great opportunities to view bears. You're towards the end of July, so it should be a good time for it.
That's just cool to know. And so it sounds like there's pretty much, whales on and off throughout the season pretty consistently.
Yeah,
Um,
the humpbacks especially. The orcas are sort of in and out because they're constantly in movement. The humpbacks, like, they sort of have their feeding grounds, and then they're like, okay, this is my bay, or this is the strait that I'm in. So we see them much more consistently.
that's so cool. And then the bears you're saying, so if I understand that correctly, with bears, we're talking about they're around most of our cruising season from May to the end of August, first week of September. But except for that kind of like they lessen a little bit in that end of June, early July, like 2 week period.
Yeah, basically. There's
And
a few
so,
weeks where they're not as common. I mean, it's hit or miss regardless with bears.
yeah.
You might get lucky. So for instance, when we have really warm, dry weather, which makes most of our guests really happy, doesn't necessarily make the bears happy because they're wearing fur coats. So the drier and hotter the weather, it
Yeah.
also decreases the chances of maybe we're not going to see them as often during the daytime or in the afternoon. So it will
Okay.
vary. So I'm a big fan of the rain, and I like to argue that one of the best things about the rain is it's good weather for the bears as well.
Sure. Yeah. So potentially, even if it was like raining a ton, in maybe even that middle period that you were talking about, you might see more than you usually would
Yeah.
when they're normally retreating. But in that time period, is there something else that kind of like makes up for it? Like, is there a really cool thing that happens in that, when there's not quite as many bears?
Yeah, I mean, once again, that's a pretty, like, right in the middle of the humpbacks being out there, so we should be seeing lots of them. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff out there. For me, I mean, I'm a huge fan of flowers, so that's like right at the peak of when all of our wildflowers are out.
Oop.
Lots of wildflowers during that time, and then they start to disappear for the most part, and die out, and that's when we start getting the berries and the mushrooms come in. So yeah,
Oh,
people ask pretty frequently, like, what's the best time to come on a trip? And it
like,
really depends on what you're into and what you like, but there's something new for every period of time. That's another thing I love about the job. It's constantly changing.
yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. It depends on weather, rains, on years, off years. Um, but hopefully, maybe I'll put this video up on our website as under our FAQs so that if people are looking for kind of ranges of times to see cool things, we can kind of point them to this video. But that's really cool about the wildflowers because I saw pictures this year and was blown away by the beauty.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
may or
God.
may not have made a big stink with some of the other members of the crew, Captain Cliff and Dylan, who was our first mate, to try to push us to go to a certain spot, which I shall not name. that we go to occasionally. It's a difficult place to go to because of time constraints, but it has an amazing wildflower bloom of wild irises. So I won't name the place, but it's pretty
That's
cool.
the
Every
one.
couple of weeks, that's a thing, and it's one of my, I'll call it one of my happy places. It's pretty cool.
Now you're in trouble. You're on recorded video
Yeah,
referring to that
I'm,
wildflower bloom area.
I'm often in trouble, so.
Okay, we had a couple other things coming through really quick. Because we've got about 5 minutes left, but we'll maybe go 5 minutes over. So maybe we'll do about 10 minutes just to make sure we have everybody. If I still have time with you, Christian, if that's okay.
No.
You okay?
Yeah,
Good.
I'm hanging out.
You okay down there in Mexico?
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
Christian's in Mexico. Okay, but let's see. Okay, let's gloss over this one. From our hidden guest here from YouTube. That's who I'll call them. You said you've worked on both boats. What makes the Liseron so special to you? I've only been on Miss Cove, but excited to cruise on Liseron soon. Oh, so maybe they have a tour booked on the Liseron, or they're interested in going.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Liseron's the baby. The Liseron's our first boat we had, but I'll let Christian speak to it.
Yeah, so they're both really cool boats. Liseron is an original, so it is a wooden vessel. Miss Cove was built basically off of the Liseron's model, but was built specifically for us. So Liseron is a very old boat from the 1950s. It was a big active minesweeper for the French Navy, and it is a wooden vessel. So that part's really cool. They're both beautiful vessels. I think Liseron's a little bit smaller. We've got a little bit of instead of 24 passengers, it's 20 passengers. It's a little bit quieter because it's made out of wood. I will say, if you're a tall individual, which I'm of decidedly middling height, if you're a tall individual, the Liseron is not necessarily favorable to the tall individuals. It's shorter entryways, and the stairs are a little bit steeper. They're more like a proper ladder in a sense than stairs. But yeah, Liseron's super cool. From a working standpoint, it's got some like different aspects to it. Dropping the anchors a little more intuitive and a little cooler. It's not quite as loud, so I feel like I'm damaging my ears a little less. When it comes to dropping skiffs and kayaks, it's a little bit different. I will say our crane is centered on the boat, whereas the Miss Cove has two cranes, and so you can look directly down from the crane. So it's a little bit strange being in the center of the boat and not being able to see what's going on. So there's a lot of communication between you and the other people dropping the skiff to make sure nobody gets hurt. But Liseron's a super cool vessel. It's got all the history to it. Yeah, I think that's the fact that it's a wooden vessel is one of the things that makes it pretty special.
Yes, and I know that. I wish I don't mess this up. I hope I don't mess this up. But I think it was like this past, so in the summer of, or not the summer, sorry, the off season of 2023. So not this winter, but last winter, the Liseron had extensive work done, right?
Yeah, well, and that was a lot of, quite a few people involved, but Dylan, who's the first mate on Liseron, is the main winter caretaker of the vessels, and he is pretty great with I won't say he's obsessive about fixing little things, but he definitely loves to tinker and to make improvements and to keep it looking beautiful. So he did a great job.
Yeah, so anybody who's been on the Liseron, even for this particular person who maybe has not, but even for those who haven't, or those who even have, I've heard and seen some pictures that a lot was done to the Liseron in this last year, and then now I think the Miss Cove is up next. So it's just alternate years of taking extra sweeps through to make sure everybody's beautiful. And yeah, let's see here. I had something else from somebody. Oh, I think this is Paul. It says Spirit Olson. Could that be Paul?
Yeah, it's got a dog, so I'm assuming it's probably Paul.
Okay, so Paul is who we were talking about before. He does all of the permitting, all of the legal work. He even helps us fight our battles to protect the Tongass, as Christian said earlier. Um, the education part of his presentations and the part of why he's on the boat. It's not only just to educate you just about the amazingness of the nature you're around, but we do like to talk about the fact that we are a nonprofit cruise line, the only as far as we know, the only in the world. So we've put over 30 to 35 million, we're approaching dollars back into the Tongass National Forest in the course of our 40 years to protect it, to keep it protected under the roadless rule, to prevent it from logging. Starting to get interested, and if we haven't already, Paul and others would know more, but I know that it was a big initiative of Hunter's that he wants to start looking into the bycatch issues that are happening there with the fishing trawler boats. So we do a lot of work, but Paul Olson here, who I have pulled up, not only did he help, he actually, wrote this whole itinerary for me, made my job easy. I just had to put it on the site. It was actually written very beautifully, so I didn't even need to make it pretty. But not only does he do that, but he gets all the permits for us to be in these places, and he also, for years, decades, if not, has been, helping us work with other organizations to keep the Tongass protected under the Roadless Rule Act. So, and he's doing it right now. We're working against it right now because there's currently a lawsuit to get it unprotected, and we're working to reprotect it. So we love you, Paul. But so he also knows a lot about these areas due to obviously all the permitting and everything. So he said, I think when we were talking about this must be the Ketchikan itinerary.
Yeah, the Ketchikan itinerary. And I apologize, Bill. I should also mention sea lions and sea otters you'll probably see in July. But yeah, he's mentioning the sea otters, which are always fun. People love the sea otters. They're super adorable. So they're a fun one. So hey, hopefully we get lucky, see some sea otters. That's right around pupping season. So maybe we'll see some otter rafts while we're down there.
That's so cool. Yeah. And just in case you didn't hear that, Christian, just in case you didn't hear that, Christian was speaking to you, Bill, in case you didn't hear your name there, Bill. But it seems like Bill has, well, hang on. So let's just see. So you just spoke, Christian, to what Paul was saying about stretches of hotspots for sea otters in the Wrangell Narrow. One of the highest sea otter densities per square mile on the entire coast. That's really cool. Yeah. And they are so fun and inquisitive and everything. Oh, okay. So Bill heard us. That's good. And then he also had one more question.
Yeah, no, happy.
He's asking about the types of bears.
Okay, so I'll put this in there. So brown bears are grizzly bears. In Southeast Alaska and on the coast, we typically refer to them as coastal brown bears or brownies. Within the company, we call them brown fuzzies. So grizzly bears are brown bears. We just don't refer to them as grizzlies. Black bears we'll see on the mainland and on islands like QU Island, which we do occasionally go to, and then further south. So like on that Ketchikan trip, we're going to be in black bear territory. When we are on our normal routine with Admiralty and Baranof being the main islands, and Chichikov, those are the ABC islands. So those are all brown bear islands. So just brown bears, no black bears. What is kind of cool about those brown bears, and I apologize, I mentioned before, I'm pretty bad at staying on time. The brown bears on the ABC islands are genetically distinct from the brown bears on the mainland. They actually have polar bear DNA, which I won't get into the full story in that. You'll have to come on board and ask about it. But yeah, our brown bears from there have polar bear DNA related to when the glaciers used to be all over Southeast Alaska and their recession. So on the ABC Islands, which is where we normally operate, you'll be seeing lots of brown/grizzly bears. But we don't ever call them brown grizzlies. We just call them brownies or brown fuzzies.
Okay, all of my listeners who are, if you're not coming on the ship this year, I will try to wait for the whole cruising season to end, and then I will come back to Christian, and I will make him do another live stream explaining to us all about this polar bear DNA. That's a really cool teaser. I feel like we should be like Netflix, like a Netflix show, and just drop that bomb, and then be like, okay, we're done, because we are.
Cool.
But no, Christian, thank you so much for your time. Oh my gosh, I learned so much, and I'm obviously obsessed with nature. That's why I work with the company. It was just, I actually had a ton of fun. So I learned so much, and I think that we'll be able to, use this video and let people refer back to it to learn some things about kind of like seasonality. I'm glad we talked about that, kind of the different wildlife and flora and fauna that appear, the different times of year while cruising. And we dropped the catch a can bomb on everybody too. So that's exciting. So we'll see if our lovely Kathy, if her lines are going crazy right now. That is on the Liseron. So Christian will be on it. And so the Liseron is the boat with 10 cabins. Correct, Christian? So
10 cabins, 20 passengers.
So that's that's 20 people. 20 lucky people will get to go. And I've already asked the company. I said, what if another 20, 40 people want to go? And so, we've tossed some possibilities around about maybe throwing something at the end of the season if it's possible. But if not, we'll definitely
the season after.
Yeah, exactly. If not, we'll be doing it we'll be making it more of a trip in 2026 for sure. And we just have a thank you, another thank you to Christian. Christian, thank you so much. And we were worried, but we successfully live streamed with me in the Southeast United States and you in Mexico and Kathy in Poulsbo, Washington. We're all over the place. Our boats are, I don't know, where are they? Do you know where they are?
They're in Reedsport, Oregon right now.
In Oregon.
Like I said, Dylan and a few of the other crew members are out there taking care of them. So
yeah, we're in all time zones. Our company. It's been fun. Kathy and I say it's been fun time traveling.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you all so much, and you're so welcome, Bill. I'm glad we got to answer your questions. We're so excited for you to cruise with us.
Yeah, ask Charlie lots of difficult questions.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. He's cruising with Charlie.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So just tell Charlie that Christian said that you could ask him whatever you wanted. All right. Well, thank you all so much. And we're so happy that we got to chat with you, and hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, just email. You can email us. I don't know if I have a banner for that. I don't, but we're just hello@theboatcompany.org. Let me just actually make a banner for that real quick. Okay, so that's our email address. If you want to drop us a line, have any questions, have any inquiries about a trip, or if you'd rather just call Kathy directly. She is a wealth of knowledge. As you know, as you saw, she's been with us for 35 years, and she actually used to work on the boats, and she actually did go when we were last in Ketchikan. So she has some Ketchikan information, and she also has the itinerary as well, which is in depth. So she knows a lot about what's going on with that trip. So thank you all so much, and thank you so much, Christian. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm looking forward to another season next year. So hopefully some of you guys watching this will get to ask me questions in person and not get too tired of listening to me talk.
Yeah, don't forget to ask about the polar bears, and then find me on social media and tell me about the polar bears, people. All right, thank you all so much. We're going to end this now. Bye.